Hello dear YouTuber friends, and I do hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to this new video. It's back to basics with Microsoft Flight Sim part 48. In this video I'm going to be talking about vertical speed and flight level change mode, or indicated airspeed mode. I'm going to talk about the differences between the two of them, how to use them, and the best case uses when you should be using each of them. So when you might use vertical speed, or when you may use flight level change mode or indicated airspeed mode, as I'm currently in at the moment. So let's not dilly-dally, let's get on with this video. So in this video you find me at Charles de Gaulle Airport. Charles de Gaulle Airport in Gay Paris in the Cessna 172 with the G1000s. Let's come down and I'll talk about what vertical speed is. If you've watched my previous Back to Basics videos, the playlist is linked down below in the description. You know what these do. But I'll talk about them, just cover them quickly and talk about the differences and what they actually do. Let's talk about vertical speed first. So if you click on the vertical speed button, you'll find a VS value come up here in the G1000. It's different for each aircraft, but typically you'll find VS come up in various places on the autopilot panel. Vertical speed and flight level change mode are only used with autopilot units. It's something important. That won't do anything by itself. If I click vertical speed, I need to click the autopilot master, the on-off switch essentially for the autopilot for this to take effect. So do keep that in mind. The same for flight level change mode. If I click that, you can see FLC has come up. Nothing will happen unless I click the autopilot button on to turn on the autopilot. Just keep that in mind going forward. Let's talk about vertical speed for the moment. I'm going to click that, VS will come up, a new box will come up here. If I just zoom in a little bit there, you've got vertical speed nose up, vertical speed nose down. That should be self-explanatory. If I click the vertical speed nose up button, it's going to change this value here. Let's click it one more time. If I had my autopilot on and an assigned autopilot altitude set up here, assigned altitude, let's just do that. 3,000 feet, just for example, I want to climb, take off and climb to 3,000 feet. I've got the vertical speed value set up there. I'll be climbing at 400 feet per minute. I'm going to show you this in action at the moment. In a moment. I can change that value. I can make it climb at 500 feet per minute. Or if I was at altitude, say I've taken off and I've climbed to 3,000 feet. Using the vertical speed nose down button, I can change this to a minus value, which means I'll be descending, in this case, minus 400 feet per minute. I'll be descending at 400 feet per minute, 500 feet per minute, that type of thing. In a nutshell, that is what vertical speed does. Now, I'll talk more about this in a moment. There's best case uses for this, and it's dependent really on the power of your aircraft as well, whether you should be using this to take off and climb to that altitude. Let's now turn vertical speed off there, as you can see. Let's now talk about flight level change mode. A different way of saying this is indicated airspeed. What airspeed do you want your aircraft to climb at? When you're taking off in an underpowered aircraft such as the Cessna 172, it's not that powerful an aircraft. Probably, and people have shouted to me at this in my previous videos, you should be climbing using flight level change mode or indicated airspeed mode, and you're absolutely correct. And I should be doing this more often. Flight level change mode, if I click on that, you'll see FLC come up here. You actually use vertical speed nose down for some reason to change the value in the G1000 at least. So if I click that, Now I'm going to link in the top right a short I did on what each of these values mean. Don't worry about the rest of them. The one you should be paying attention to is this one here, the Y. It's telling you this is the best speed to set for flight level change mode to give you the optimal climb to your altitude with the current loadout of your aircraft. It's a bit of a mouthful there, but the Y, the 74 knots, is the best speed to climb at to get to your altitude quicker with the current layout, you know, fuel and weight of your aircraft. Currently, that's the best value, the best speed to climb at. So what will happen, let's just set it to that 74. So I've got it in flight level change mode. I've clicked on that button. FLC has come up. I'm using the nose down button to change that value to 74 knots. If I go over that, say I go to 83 knots, there you go. I can use the nose up button. Let's go slower to change that back to 74 knots. What will happen in a moment, I'll show you this rather in a moment. You'll take off, you go full throttle, take off. You'll likely be speeding, your speed will likely climb to around 90 to 100 knots. Soon as I click that flight level change button, the nose of the aircraft will go up, basically. Because it will... Let's try and explain that a little bit clearer. Maybe I'll take off, my speed, my actual speed will get to something like... or indicated airspeed will get to something like 90, 100 knots, as I'll show you in a moment. The aircraft will pitch up, nose up, basically, to maintain 74 knots in the climb. And it's going to get you to that 3,000 feet in the best climb, the best profile possible, which is that 74 knots. Hope that makes sense. It's the safest way to climb because it's not going to go below. It's going to maintain 74 knots, which is well above stall speed. If I was using vertical speed and I clicked, I was a bit too enthusiastic with that vertical speed and I clicked it at something like 3,500 feet per minute climb, you're going to find the aircraft will stall. In fact, I'll show you that. Let's keep it in vertical speed profile at 3,500 feet per minute climb. Just change my heading bug there. I'm just using my multi-panel to change that. To sync it to my current heading. Full throttle. Release the parking brake. Let's take off and we'll turn it on the autopilot and climb at 3,500 feet per minute just to show you what happens. Now, you wouldn't normally do that. You'll maybe use vertical speed of a few hundred feet per minute, but if you've not got your throttle up you can still stall. That's why flight level change mode will be safer. So there we go, we'll get to 70 knots. And I'm just trimming up, but you can see my airspeed is already climbing there. It's gone over the 74 knots. We're talking about vertical speed at the moment. I'm going to click autopilot master on. It's going to climb at 3,500 feet per minute. Look what's happening to my speed. Like I said, unless you're being very silly, you wouldn't set it to 3,500 feet climb. But look, this is why vertical speed may be dangerous. And say you're flying through mountains, your speed's not very high, you click vertical speed on. Look what's happening. The aircraft stalling. What I would do there is turn autopilot off. Level out my aircraft. So I'm just going to trim down, level out, and then I'll climb at a more sensible speed. That's vertical speed in action. Let me now show you flight level change mode in action. Okay, so let's now give you an example of flight level change mode. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to move my... I can do it with the heading knob here. Just sync my heading. Oh, it's easier on my multi-panel, to be fair. I can get there a lot quicker. Change my assigned autopilot altitude, what I want my aircraft to climb to, 3,000 feet. Click on the flight level change mode button, and there you go. It's telling me 74 knots is the best profile, which I explained before. Vertical speed nose down. Make sure that FLC has come up here green. Vertical speed nose down to 74 knots. 74 knots. And there we go. And I'll just put you in this view, throttle up, release the parking brake. I've got my throttle set there. Yeah, okay, I've got it set pretty much full. It's okay. Let's not confuse matters here. Right. So I'm just going to taxi along until I get to around 70 knots or so. I don't have any flap settings, so 70 knots plus is a good speed to take off in the Cessna 172. And that will be fine. Pull back my yoke. I'm just going to trim. You can see my airspeed, indicated airspeed there. It's going up to 90 knots. I've trimmed up. I'm in the positive rate of climb just there. That's fine. I'll click on the autopilot and let it climb me. There you go. It's pitching the nose of the aircraft up. It's come down to this view, and it should keep us now at 74 knots because I've got it in flight level change mode, and I've set that to 74 knots. It means it's going to still climb us at a good rate to 3,000 feet, but it's not going to take us below, maybe just below, but it's going to keep us around that 70, well there you go, it's going to keep us at 74 knots. And if I go outside, you can see the nose of the aircraft is pitched up. Get back up. Wrong button. Get back in the cockpit. You can see it's maintaining roughly that 74 knots and not putting us in danger of stalling, regardless of the power of your engine now. I mean, if you take off, you really want to go full throttle anyway. But it's going to maintain the 74 knots at a safe speed and safely climb us to 3,000 feet. That's why pilots will use, if it's available, flight level change mode to take off and climb to your 3,000 feet, and that is really the safest way to do it in the sim and out of it. Some aircraft, I've noticed, like this Cessna 182, it's a more powerful aircraft. Typically I'll just use vertical speed to climb. I know I won't set my vertical speed too aggressively, maybe, I mean, could be 1,000 feet per minute in that. I know with the Cessna 172 it's got the engine power not to worry too much about it, but still ideally use flight level change mode, indicated airspeed mode, to keep your aircraft at a safe speed in a climb. There's one more case I want to show you here, one more thing I want to show you, so let's go to that part now. So there's one more thing I want to cover here. I've climbed to my 3,000 feet altitude, but I want to descend. I've had enough of a fly around, taken enough of a tour of lovely Paris, but I can see maybe a couple of airports. There's one in the distance there. I want to descend to try and land at an airport now. I've set my autopilot assigned altitude to, let's set it at 1,000 feet. I can use flight level change to descend again. Now I've seen arguments of this, that if you set it in flight level change mode to descend, and say you want to descend at 74 knots or whatever, or 80 knots, can be a little bit jerky. If you've got passengers on board, you may actually find that sort of lurch down to that speed a little bit jerky. What I tend to use, and I think it's fine to descend, and do leave your own comments on this down below, I want to descend using vertical speed, but using a sensible vertical speed descent. Say I want to descend at, I don't know, 600 feet per minute. Using vertical speed nose down, to descend at 600 feet, I'm watching my indicated airspeed increase there. So I'm just going to decrease my throttle, say to around 60% there, just so my engine power doesn't overspeed. And I get to descend at 600 feet per minute quite safely without any sort of lurching or jerky movements there. I can increase that, say, to 800 feet per minute descent. Just going to decrease my throttle again. I've got it at 50% now, just so that my airspeed doesn't overspeed the aircraft. And as you can see, I'm descending at 800 feet per minute. Personally, especially in a sim, remember, any videos I'm showing here are for simming purposes. Vertical speed to descend is absolutely fine in my opinion. When you do set a vertical speed, if I set that to 1,000 feet per minute, just watch your aircraft indicated airspeed there. If it's climbing, and I'm not in danger really of overspeeding there, so I could leave it there at 50% throttle. Just watch your indicated airspeed. If it starts to get into this range, in overspeed range, pull back your throttle while you're descending. Let me know your thoughts on that particular subject, people. Would you use flight level change mode to descend? There you go, we're getting somewhere towards our 1,000 feet. Or would you use vertical speed like I do to descend? I believe it's absolutely fine. Just going to pull my throttle back slightly there, just so I can slow the indicated airspeed down. And then I'll find a runway to land at here and land quite easily. So there you go, my friends. That's the differences between flight level change mode and vertical speed, and typically the best uses between the two. I will be interested to hear your comments down below, so do leave a comment in the comment section. Give the video a like if you've enjoyed it, subscribe for more, and I'll be seeing you soon.